15 spine-chilling Walmart horror tales, uncover the sinister secrets. After midnight, Molly stepped through the sliding doors of Walmart, a heaviness settling on her shoulders. It was her 31st birthday, but it felt like just another day filled with late shifts and the flickering hum of fluorescent lights. She pushed her cart through the entrance, the cool air making her shiver slightly. Each aisle loomed ahead like darkened streets in a ghost town, lonely, eerie, as if some unnameable terror lurked in the shadows. As the clock ticked towards midnight, whispers danced through the store, filling the air with a palpable tension. It wasn't he right? The customers, the security guards, even her fellow employees threw furtive glances at each other, smiles too wide, laughter too sharp. They all felt it, that electric desperation circling overhead. Something was about to go horribly wrong. She barely started her round through the snack aisle when laughter echoed from the stockroom. Sharp, sinister, it scraped against her nerves. Molly paused, heart racing. The casual chatter of coworkers had always comforted her, a balm against the loneliness, but now it felt like danger. Shadows shifted in the corners of her vision, pulling her thoughts toward conspiracies she dismissed only last week. Before she could shake the feeling, she caught a glimpse of someone in the reflection of a nearby freezer, an employee she recognized only from the breaks room. Standing too still, eyebrows drawn, he stared at something just outside her view. Panic shot through her. Was he one of them? She backed away, heart drumming in her ears, but curiosity was a cruel master. She had to look. Molly crept toward the stockroom door, the laughter swelling and crashing like waves in a storm. A chill tightened around her as she pushed the door cracked ajar. Shadows moved in a flickering light. Several faces she knew, some too familiar, the woman from the coffee shop, a friendly local dad, all gathered, an unsettling camaraderie hanging over them. "Did you hear about her?" one voice murmured, the words like ice in her veins. Trying to make a life for that kid of hers. So naive. She'll never get away. Molly's heart stopped. They were talking about her? Desperately, she turned to leave. But heavy footsteps echoed behind her, warning her of the impending danger. Paralyzed by fear, she caught one last glimpse. The employee she distrusted was watching her now, and the glint in his eyes told her she was the target. Before we continue, I need to tell you something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to their system, and many people are missing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and select all notifications so you don't miss future videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With adrenaline coursing through her, she bolted down the deserted aisle, every flickering overhead light casting grotesque shadows behind her. She could feel eyes on her, the pressing weight of danger hovering close. Everything she thought she knew about her neighbors, her town, felt like a fragile web unraveling in the dark. Molly sprinted past the displays, pausing only when she finally reached the soft glow of the produce section. But it was here, in the fruit aisle, where the world twisted further. She saw her daughter's face reflected in a nearby security monitor, a mirror of Molly's own terror. The veil of security she had clung to was ripped away, and nothing but an abyss remained. What had she unleashed? As darkness swallowed the store, she heard the echo of laughter fade into a sickly silence. The clock ticked, but her fight was just beginning, and she knew the shadows were hungry. Molly pressed her back against a wall of crates, hard hammering. The produce section felt unreal, bursting with colors yet absent of life. Where once she'd felt a sense of comfort among apples and oranges, now lay only a gnawing dread. A low murmur floated through the air, punctuated by stifled giggles, echoing against the silence like footsteps following closely behind. Glimpsing the security monitor again, the image of her daughter's frightened face held her captive, tears pooling in her eyes. Her instincts screamed at her to run, but she couldn't leave her daughter dangling in this void. She turned to look back down the aisle leading to the stockroom. The shadows flickered at the edge of her vision, teasing her with glimpses of the familiar faces that just moments ago had provided her with a false sense of belonging. The laughter grew louder, but it wasn't cheerful. It held a menacing undertone, reverberating through the very aisles she had walked hundreds of times. She knew she had to make a choice. Either confront whatever was happening or hide and let the darkness consume her. Taking a deep breath, she decided to move towards the sounds of chaos. Creeping down the aisle, she ducked behind a display of canned beans. A figure swept past, the two bright fluorescent lights reflecting off a cruel smile. It was the friendly dad. She recognized his features twisted into something horrific as he shared in the laughter, now seeming almost unrecognizable. He locked eyes with Molly, and somewhere in those depths she saw glimmers of her previous trust wilt under a layer of predation. Molly's pulse raced even faster. "They're all in on it," she muttered to herself, her voice barely above a whisper. The idea of flight shattered as she felt pinned by their gaze. The shadows swirled closer, edging dangerously towards her. Panic surged. She edged out from behind the display, attempting to slip around them unseen. Her breath came shallow and rattled. Every creak of the floor echoed like a gunshot in the cavernous space. Just when she thought she might make it, a burst of hysteria broke from the gathered group, their eyes swirling with some shared delusion, zeroed in on her. "Molly!" A voice called out mockingly, pulling her back into the nightmare. Her name rang out like a death knell. "Come join us. It's a little welcoming party." She turned and sprinted towards the front of the store, but every instinct in her fought against that logical path. The glass doors gleamed like a promise, but would they lead her to safety or something worse? Suddenly, a loud clattering erupted from the back of the store, a cacophony of something heavy crashing. The crowd paused, their laughter halting as dread fused in the air. Molly seized this chance. Running past the checkout, she reached the entrance just as a flicker of movement in the shadowed corners caught her eye. A figure rose beside the sliding doors, blocking her way. The store manager? No, it was something far more sinister, someone who wasn't just one of them, but something else entirely. "Don't you want to play?" it whispered, grinning wide, teeth sharp and glistening under the harsh lights. Molly recoiled, but beyond the figure, she could see a flicker of movement. Her daughter was here, running towards her. Would she risk it all to reach her? Or was this part of the trap? Before she could decide, the figure lurked closer, whispering in a hissing tone, "You should have never come back." As darkness washed over her surroundings, Molly felt the weight of impending doom close in. Fear electrified the air, and with each passing moment, hope seemed to slip further from her grasp. Would she make it in time to save her daughter? Or had the shadows already claimed them both? Molly's heart skipped a beat as her daughter, Alice, cried out, "Mommy!" The warmth of hope surged through her, fiercely battling the icy grip of something far more dreadful. But the figure blocking her way didn't budge. Its grin widened, feral and hungry, a predatory glimmer in its eyes. "Molly, come to me!" The voice beckoned, smooth like silk but laced with venom. The familiar tones from a mother turned into an echo that sent chills up her spine. With the terror of the room closing in, Molly took a step forward, her mind screaming to flee, but her heart fighting against the tide. The other shoppers, or whatever they had become, stood frozen, their laughter morphing into eerily synchronized whispers, each syllable a blade carving deeper into her sanity. "Molly, come join us, we're having fun!" The voice dripped with mockery while shadows stretched and twitched along the aisles, bending and twisting as if they held lives of their own. They were no longer mere flickers but dark entities spun from every childhood nightmare. "Alice!" she shouted, desperation clawing at her throat. But as her daughter's small frame neared, the figure blocked the path, its hand outstretched, claw-like fingers splayed menacingly. She could see Alice flinch, confusion swirling in her wide eyes. If Molly stepped forward, would she be lost to this nightmarish parody of the life she once knew? "Molly, I'm scared," Alice whimpered, her small voice cutting through the choking blackness that engulfed them. "Stay back, sweetheart." Molly's voice trembled but held firm, like a shield against the ever-pressing darkness. The light from the fluorescent bulbs flickered, sputtered, and dimmed, as if the very stores were entangled in the chaotic haunting unfolding around her. She took a deep breath, a call to courage in the thick air tainted with malice and decay. Then, With a jolt, she made a decision. Turning sharply, she grabbed the first thing she could find, a glossy apple, red and shiny, somehow still there amidst the horror. She hurled it at the figure blocking her way, a misguided attempt at distraction. "Get away from her!" she screamed, the command explosive in the trembling silence. The apple struck with a wet thud, splattering juice across the figure's face. For a moment, the grin faltered, replaced by a flicker of something almost human, shock, perhaps? Molly seized the moment. She dashed towards Alice, but just as they closed the distance, the crowd began to stir. The once silent watchers erupted, a flood of movement, clamoring forward with frenzied excitement. The harsh fluorescent lights dimmed further, and the gnawing laughter returned, rising in a crescendo that seemed to echo through the very bones of the store. Molly scooped Alice into her arms, heart thundering, nerves alive with terror. The exit loomed ahead like the final breath of fresh air after drowning beneath the waves. But just as hope ignited, metal doors ground against each other, the weight of shadows pressing in from every side. "Let us play a game!" The figure hissed again, its voice now a chorus deadened by rage. The aisles blurred, hazy phantoms skittering along the edges of her vision. "Mommy! I don't want to play!" Alice shrieked, burying her face into Molly's shoulder. "What game?" Molly gasped, terror twisting her stomach. "What do you want from us?" But as she turned to confront the figure, darkness spilled out from the corners, pooling along the linoleum, slithering with predatory glee. Everything it rasped, a grin impossibly wide, mere inches away now. A sudden burst of terrifying laughter erupted, and the world narrowed to a flickering heartbeat. Their end was approaching. In a desperate push, she sprinted for the door, but the shadows clawed at her ankles, pulling her down. Would they consume her entirely? The next instant, she reached the glass door, throwing herself against it, every muscle taut with panic. Would they break through in time, or had she sealed her fate? A cold breeze brushed against her skin, an impossible sensation before reality twisted, abruptly shattering into fragments of darkness. What awaited beyond that threshold? A barren wasteland or salvation? Molly's breath caught, holding on to the last vestige of hope amidst the chaos. But just as she was about to slip through, a shrieking voice rang out, unmistakable and familiar. "Mommy!" The shriek cut through the chaos. What happened next would change everything. Molly froze, the sound of Alice's voice shattering the moment. Cold fear seeped into her bones. What had she just heard? Alice's cry echoed in the cavernous store, bouncing off the walls as if mocking her attempt to escape. The figure in front of her turned slightly, a twisted grin creeping back, eyes glinting with malicious delight. "Ah, she does want to play it," cooed, the voice thick with anticipation. As if on cue, the crowd of shoppers lurched forward, their bodies shifting like shadows, limbs akimbo, laughter transforming into a sinister chant. "Join us! Join us!" Molly's heart raced. She couldn't lose Alice. Not now. Somehow, against the pulse of dread clawing at her, she turned to face her daughter. "Alice! I'm right here! Don't come any closer! Stay back!" But the shadows seemed to stretch and twist, curling around Alice, whispering hollow promises of a game that would never end. Molly felt her blood run cold as she watched her daughter, innocent and wide-eyed, take a hesitant step toward the nightmare that had her captive. "No! Alice, please!" Molly shouted, desperation drowning her. She took a step forward, ready to plunge into the darkness if it meant saving her child. But as she moved, the darkness surged, a wave of thick black tide that crashed against her, pushing her back, holding her in place like a vice. The laughter of the crowd warped into a cacophony, blending with the relentless heartbeat of shadows thumping around her. "Come play, Molly!" they sang, voices mingling into a chilling symphony. "Stop! You don't know what you're asking!" Molly screamed, her voice fracturing, desperation lacing through every word. But the shadows only deepened, absorbing every ounce of light, leaving Molly more terrified and anguished than ever. The figure moved closer, elongated fingers gesturing as if inviting her into a dance. "Lose yourself, find her, it's all a game!" It took another slow, deliberate step forward. The grotesque face, once distorted by a terrible hunger, began to morph into something vaguely familiar. Molly's breath hitched as recognition flickered a fleeting glimpse of her own mother, twisted and tainted by darkness. Tears stung her eyes as she tried to reformulate her plan. Alice was almost beckoned into the crowd, tilting her head, mesmerized. "Mommy, it looks like fun," she murmured, innocence breaking Molly's heart. "No! It's not fun!" Molly cried out, gripping Alice's small arm as she instinctively lunged forward. But the grip of the darkness was as suffocating as despair itself. "Don't listen! It's a trick!" Just then, the fluorescent lights flickered ominously, plunging the store into a temporary dark void. In that heartbeat, terror pulled in her gut, whispering terrible truths. The shadows grew strong, inhaling her cries, and when the lights snapped back to life, the figure radiated an aura of triumph, the grin broader than ever. Molly's hold tightened around Alice. She felt the cold glint of fear in her daughter's eyes. That glimmer of the familiar had shrouded her with uncertainty. Would they both disappear into the clutches of the nightmarish figure? Suddenly, without warning, the crowd erupted into a horde, forced their way forward, chaos swallowing reason. The very floor trembled beneath them, rattling their bones as pale hands clawed toward Molly and Alice, hollow souls yearning to drag them into eternal darkness. The frantic realization struck: this wasn't just a game, it was a life-or-death struggle. But how to escape this hell? "Mommy! What do we do?" Alice's voice rang true, desperate and pleading. Molly steeled herself. "We fight. Hold on tight." The plan was reckless, but what choice did they have? With pure instinct, she turned sharply and plunged into the crowd, desperately pushing through the writhing mass, the chaotic world around them blurring into a storm of despair. In a wild gasp, they broke free, only to discover that the exits were unyielding, blocked by a wall of living shadows just waiting for their next victim. Molly whispered the figure, voice curling in the back of her mind. "You can win. This is your home now." And just as they wheeled around, an harsh voice rang out from behind them, surprising them both. "Leave her alone." Molly turned, stricken by fear and hope. Who had just spoken? The darkness paused, momentarily hesitant. Light flickered again, illuminating a stranger, a figure wielding something glinting, giving a spark of hope amidst the terror. Who were they, and might they be their key to freedom, or just another part of the twisted game? Molly's heart pounded against her chest, the unknown brewing in the air. Would this be their answer, or their doom? The answer awaited. Molly squinted against the flickering light, trying to make sense of the silhouette that had emerged from the chaotic shadows. It was a woman, masked in the same dark pallor that surrounded them, but her eyes shone with a sharp clarity. She held up a silver object that glimmered like hope, a thick, old-fashioned flashlight which sliced through the surrounding gloom. "Over here! Quickly!" the woman shouted, urgency lacing her voice as she waved them closer. Alice clung to Molly's side, her small body trembling. "Mommy, can we trust her?" "She seems real," Molly replied, though a sense of doubt gnawed at her stomach. What was real in this cursed place? But there was no time to hesitate. She pulled Alice closer, hoping against hope that this stranger wasn't another manifestation of the darkness. As they rushed toward the flicker of light, the crowd surged, shadows reaching like gnarled fingers desperate to pull them back into the dark abyss. The woman stepped between them and the oncoming darkness, the beam from her flashlight creating a barrier of shimmering light. "Stay behind me," she barked, her voice firm, but there was a tremor bustling beneath, an unsteady edge. Molly's heart raced as they moved into the bubble of light. The shadows writhed angrily, retreating as the light pushed against them. "Who are you?" Molly gasped, trying to absorb the moment. "I'm someone who has seen this nightmare before," the woman answered, glancing back to ensure they were still safe. "You don't want to know my name. Just know that I've survived." A burst of frenzied laughter erupted from the shadows, drowning her words in chaotic madness. "You think you can protect them, dearie? This is just a game," they taunted, their voices rising and falling like a warped echo. Don't listen! The woman shouted, swinging the flashlight wildly, creating a kaleidoscope of light that momentarily confused the shadows. Light is a weapon here. Use it! Molly felt a flicker of hope surge within her. With shaking hands, she grabbed Alice's small flashlight from her pocket, the small beam weak but resolute against the encroaching darkness. Point it that way, Molly commanded, and they both aimed their lights toward the shifting mass. The shadows shrieked, recoiling from the beams of light as if burned, twisting away as they retreated into the store's corners. Molly could see now the more light they produced, the more the darkness faltered. It wasn't over, but they had a fighting chance. Come on, we need to get out, the woman urged, eyes wide with urgency. Keep the lights steady. They moved together, breaking through the crowd of shadows. The store felt like a maze, every row a potential trap, but the promise of freedom lay just beyond the next aisle. But as they pressed on, a heavy weight settled above them. A sound began to ripple through the store, deep and rhythmic, an ominous drumbeat that resonated with a heartbeat long forgotten. Not now, the woman breathed, eyes darting nervously as the noise grew louder, reverberating through the walls. They're calling for reinforcements. Molly's mind raced, so close yet so far from salvation. What do we do? Where do we go? Up! The woman shouted, urgency bursting from her lips like manic laughter. We need to get higher. The roof. It's the only way. They can't reach us. Molly glanced toward the ceiling. How? And in that moment, the lights flickered again, plunging them into darkness once more. A heavy silence enveloped them, and then, a low rumble of laughter filled the air, as if the shadows were savoring the darkness. The noise crept like cold fingers up her spine. Make your choice. The figure of the grotesque creature materialized in the murky black, inching forward. Stay with us or dare to escape. Molly felt the ground shift beneath her. Her resolve wavered as her heart hammered in her chest. Would they dare to make a break for the roof, risking it all? Or would they succumb to the ever-present pull of the shadows? A trap lay waiting with open arms. The choice loomed in front of them. Molly's breath hitched in her throat. The grotesque figure loomed closer, its form shifting like liquid darkness, whispering promises that tangled in her mind. Choices, many have come through here, but few have left, it hissed, its voice oozing with malice. Let us go! The woman shouted, breaking Molly's paralysis. Without waiting for confirmation, she lunged toward the nearest aisle, urgency driving her forward. Molly grabbed Alice's hand tightly, forcing herself to move. The flashlight flickered back to life, a small beacon of defiance against the encroaching shadows. They hurried down the aisle, the ground seeming to quiver beneath them, a tangible fear rising as the laughter of shadows echoed louder. Each footstep felt like a countdown. Here, up this way, the woman urged, aiming her flashlight toward a row of shelves stacked high, with old, rickety crates propped against them. Help me! They scrambled together to stack crates, the sound of their frantic movements drowned by the sinister laughter behind them. The shadows pulsed, swirling around, reaching for them like creatures denied their prey. Don't look back! The woman cried, her voice cutting through the chaos. Molly gulped, focusing on the crates. The darkness was heavier now, wrapping around them like a shroud. Sweat dripped from her brow as she pushed aside every ounce of fear to climb higher, hoisting Alice after her. With each desperate pull, the walls of the store felt as though they were closing in. Molly's hands were slick against the wood, her heart pounding in her ears like a war drum. Mommy! What if it gets us? Alice's voice wavered, her eyes wide with horror. It won't. We'll be safe, Molly reassured, even as doubt crept into her soul. At last, they reached the top of the stack, and she glanced down. The scene below was chaos. Shadows writhed, and the creature merely smiled, eyes flashing with unholy delight. It gestured towards them, the laughter morphing into a sinister chant, mocking their futile escape. Look! The woman shouted, pointing her flashlight toward a vent opening high above them. We can fit through there. It leads to the roof. Molly felt a surge of hope and desperation intertwine. Can you boost Alice up? The woman nodded, eyes steely with determination. They worked quickly, steadying Alice as she climbed. Just then, a thunderous crash echoed through the store, a shelf toppling somewhere below as the shadows seemed hungry for chaos. Now! Molly urged, pushing Alice upward as the girl scrambled to fit into the vent. Mommy! Help! Alice cried, her voice strained as she wedged herself through the opening. Molly hesitated just for a heartbeat, her instincts scream against leaving Alice. Climb, quick! The woman urged, pulling Molly closer. Suddenly, darkness surged beneath them, the shadows pulling their strength, as though unleashed by the girl's cries. An icy tendril wrapped around Molly's ankle, and panic jolted through her body. Hold on! Just hold on to the edge! The woman screamed, fighting against the shadows creeping towards them. With one last look at the writhing mass, Molly hoisted herself up, desperate fingers grasping for the lip of the vent. Just as she pulled herself through, she felt a tug, something cold and sinister brushing at her leg. Alice was crying, yelling, but all Molly could feel was a rush of cold panic as the shadows swarmed beneath. They tumbled onto the roof, breathless and gasping. The vast expanse above was open and dark, the stars hidden by a thick shroud of clouds. What now? Molly asked, voice trembling with fear and adrenaline. Now we wait. They can't follow us up here. The woman paused, eyes narrowing into the void. The rhythmic laughter of the shadows still echoed down below, faint but ever present, a reminder of what they narrowly escaped. But above them, a new sound was beckoning, a soft rustle, like whispers carried by the wind, surrounded the rooftop, a slithering chorus creeping closer. Something's up here! The woman gasped, scanning the shadows that mixed with the night. Molly's heart sank. If the shadows couldn't reach them, what had found them instead? The mountain of fear swelled once more as she turned to face the encroaching darkness overhead. What terrible fate awaited them in that chilling expanse? The rustling grew sharper, jagged like broken glass scraping against each other. Molly's skin prickled as she squinted into the dark, trying to discern what moved among the shadows. Her breath hitched in her throat, and she felt the weight of the woman beside her trembling like a fragile leaf caught in a storm. Molly! Alice whimpered, pressing close to her side. I don't like this, neither do I, Molly whispered, biting her lip to suppress the wave of panic threatening to overtake her. The shadows danced, and for a moment, they formed shapes, twisted, contorted bodies that crawled tirelessly, as if they longed to escape from the dark. Stay quiet, the woman hissed, scanning the edge of the rooftop. We need to stay hidden. If it's up here, we can't let it see us. Molly nodded, but fear pulsed through her like a second heartbeat. The sounds grew louder, persistent, almost mocking. They were not alone. With a sudden rush, a shape emerged from the darkness, gliding and flickering with an unnatural grace. It was long and thin, its limbs stretching unnaturally, like a puppet on strings. Molly's mind raced, fighting to comprehend the sight before her, panic curling in her stomach as the creature moved closer. It's not, the woman began, but the words were lost in a gasp. Molly's instincts kicked in. She grabbed Alice and ducked behind the ventilation structure, pressing their bodies against the cool metal, holding her breath. Every slight sound felt amplified, every heartbeat like a drum echoing in a silence that clawed at her sanity. The creature stopped. Where are you? It cooed, a voice like nails scratching a chalkboard. It was a sickening sound, rolling through the air heavy with dread. Molly covered Alice's mouth, her eyes wide with horror. It was searching for them. Molly's mind raced, looking for a way out, when she noticed a water tower in the distance. If we can reach that, we might have a good higher ground. It could be our way down. The woman looked over, eyes gleaming with desperate hope. That's a risk we have to take. They sprang into action. With careful, cautious steps, they edged toward the side of the roof. The rustling behind them intensified, and the creature called out again, a chilling sound echoing through the night. You can't escape, I always find what I seek. Terrified but determined, they climbed over the ledge, inching their way down toward the water tower, every fiber of Molly's being screaming to run faster. Shadows flickered around them, swirling like dark smoke eager to consume them once more. Just as they reached the bottom, a piercing scream shattered the night, a scream that didn't belong to either of them. Molly turned, heart racing, to see the woman spring forward, her eyes wide as she pointed toward where Alice had just been standing. "Molly! Look out!" But it was too late. A dark tentacle swung out from the shadows, grasping for Alice, wrapping around her waist like a vice. The little girl's eyes widened in terror, a shriek locked in her throat. "No!" Molly screamed, lunging forward just as the shadows tightened their grip around Alice's body, peeling her away from Molly's reach. Gripped by desperation, Molly felt the heat of rage and raw terror fill her veins. This wasn't over. She wouldn't let fear win now. Not when so much was at stake. "Help me!" Alice cried, the helplessness shattering Molly's heart. With every ounce of strength, Molly forced herself forward, but the shadows began pulling Alice deeper into the abyss, a cacophony of whispers wrapping around her child. "Come here, sweet child, you belong to the darkness now." Molly could feel the ground shifting beneath her feet, as though the rooftop wanted to swallow her whole. In a moment of pure instinct, she let out a primal scream, a ripple of defiance against the consuming dark. Not today! What others would she lose? What would this creature demand next? As she reached out for Alice, time stood still. But then she noticed something. A glimmer at the edge of the water tower, a ladder. A way up, a chance to fight back against the darkness threatening to consume them. "Don't let go!" Molly shouted, hope and fear battling within her. Would they reach the ladder in time? Would it even save them? The entire night hung in the balance, teetering between darkness and light, as those twisted shadows revealed their most terrifying secret yet. Molly's heart thundered in her chest as she scrambled toward the ladder. The shadows twisted tighter around Alice, dragging her into a darkness that threatened to swallow them whole. The little girl's cries pierced the thick air, each desperate plea spurring Molly into action. "No! I'm coming!" she screamed. With fear fueling her, Molly lunged for the ladder. The metal rungs felt cold and slick beneath her hands as she began to climb. "Hold on, Alice! I'm almost there!" The words escaped her lips as she pulled herself higher, desperately glancing down at her daughter. Alice was writhing against the tentacle's grip, her tiny face twisted with panic. The creature loomed larger now, a mass of shadows gaining form, rippling with hatred and hunger. It was a malformed figure, transparent yet menacing, with countless eyes bearing into Molly's soul, mocking and aware. She felt an icy chill creep up her spine as its twisted smile revealed rows of jagged teeth. "Molly!" Alice wailed, her voice trembling like a fragile string ready to snap. A surge of helplessness flooded through Molly as she reached the top rung. Horrors lurking just beyond the light. What was about to be unleashed from the heart of the shadows? The knife plunged into the shadow, sending out an electric shockwave that cut through the darkness like a knife through flesh. The shriek that followed was deafening, an amalgamation of anguish and fury that rattled Molly to her core. She staggered back, momentarily blinded by the chaotic energy swirling around her. Out of the roiling mass, Alice's whimper reached her, a thread of sound woven tightly with the abyss. Molly blinked against the light, trying to find her daughter. Alice's face was pale, streaked with tears, and she was gasping as the hold of the tentacle slackened. Yet the creature writhed, dark tendrils flailing as if trying to re-establish its grip on the child. "Keep fighting, Molly! Use the light!" The man's voice urged, the urgency flooding back in as the shadows writhed violently. The spotlight flickered, its intensity wavering like a candle in a windstorm. Molly, heart racing, lunged forward again, her desperation transforming into wild resolve. "Alice!" she cried, her voice slicing through the chaos. "Grab my hand!" The little girl, eyes wide with fear but now glimmering with hope, reached for her mother. Their fingers nearly touched, trembling with the effort of resisting the darkness. Molly thrust the knife at the shadow once more, the blade gleaming with an almost ethereal light. With a final scream, she plunged it deep. A blinding flash erupted as light consumed the shadowy tendrils, forcing them back into the depths whence they came. The grotesque figure shrieked in fury, dissolving into a mist, its grip on Alice disintegrating. "Almost there!" Molly cried out, summoning every ounce of strength to pull Alice up, their fingers locking together at last. The moment felt electric, like metal melding against metal. But the shadows were relentless. In their final struggle, the creature lashed out, tendrils trying to ensnare them one last time. Cool air rushed against Molly's skin as the ladder beneath her shifted ominously. One final tight grip, and she tore Alice free. The girl tumbled into her arms, breathless and terrified, just as the last strand of darkness disintegrated in a cloud of despair. "Molly! Watch out!" The man from the light shouted, urgency coloring his voice. Molly barely had time to turn before the ground beneath them let out a bone-chilling crack. The rooftop trembled like an earthquake unleashed in a moment of pure wrath. There was no safety in that light, but only the promise of a deeper shadow below. "We have to get out!" she shouted frantically. Alice clutched her mother tightly, fear transforming into a grim resolve as she looked between the man and the impending collapse. Just as they turned to flee, something extraordinary happened. A twitching mass of darkness began to swell and reform near the edge of the rooftop. It pulsed and heaved as though something was trying to break free. Molly sensed it before it was visible, a malevolent grace wrapping around her, a call to something ancient, something still lurking in the void. "Molly!" Alice cried, her voice laced with terror, as the creature's shape stretched and contorted into a new form. This time, it wasn't just a shadow but a silhouette of what seemed to be a man. Molly felt a chill sweep through her, as if she were being drawn into a memory long forgotten. "We have to go!" she yelled, tugging Alice away from the brink of the nightmare. The weight of the past still loomed in the air, ready to engulf them whole. "Not yet," the echo of the man called from the light, his tone urgent. "There's more to this. You need to know what it wants." And as Molly propelled herself away from the fading light, she realized that the shadows were not merely a threat, they possessed a dark truth that beckoned to be revealed. What was awakening, and what was the true nature of the light they clung to? Questions simmered just beneath the surface, waiting for the moment when they would rise to haunt them. Molly felt the tremors of the rooftops slamming around them, the shadows reshaping themselves into something far worse than she could ever imagine. Holding Alice tightly, the child's small body shaking against her, Molly's heart raced with a kind of dread she had never known. But something deep within stirred, the truth was waiting to be unearthed. "I want to let you take my daughter!" Molly screamed, rising to a fever pitch. Her voice cut through the chaos, sticky and thick with tension, directed at the creature that was now taking form. The silhouette of a man twisted and turned beneath shadows heavy with burden, every feature venomous and familiar. It was the cruel visage of her brother, the one who had disappeared years ago, swallowed whole by his demons. "Alice," the apparition whispered, a mockery of tenderness dripping from its tongue. "They lie to you, sweet child. You were meant for greater things. Come to me, and I will show you the truth." "No!" Molly's own past echoed in her ears, a piercing reminder of what darkness could unleash. "Dig deep, Molly!" the man with the flashlight shouted. "The light inside you is stronger than the shadows. Remember what binds you. Use it!" With each word, glimmers of her strength returned. The bond of motherhood surged, rising like steam from the embers of a long-buried fire. "Alice, hold on to me!" she called, fiercely unwilling to let the darkness break them apart. "Just trust me. We can beat this." With a shockwave of energy spilling into the air, she lunged forward, knife aloft, aimed straight at the shape of the predatory figure. "You will not take her!" As she thrusted forward, the shadows shrieked, recoiling from her resolve. The dark reminded her of years spent in fear and rejection, but she fought them with the utter power of love. In that one frantic moment, clear as day, an image swept into her mind, a memory of holding Alice after a nightmare, soft, sweet words, "You'll always be safe with me. Always!" With a burst of blinding light emanating from within her, Molly slashed at the twisted figure, penetrating the layers of shadow that pulsed around it. The essence of her brother once lost screamed in defiance, unable to resist the core of her love. Unyielding hope coiled around her heart, pulling her away from the edge of destruction. The knife pierced the evil figure, and in that moment, the shadows howled, screeching their torment. The darkness exploded outward like a tempest across the rooftop, tearing apart the very fabric that had sought to bind them. "Mommy!" Alice screamed, clinging tighter, eyes wide with both fear and wonder as light burst across the skyline, dissolving the twisted forms back into nothingness. Molly gasped as she looked up, awash with shimmering radiance that cascaded over them like a blanket. The shadows were dissipating, withering away, their power broken. She felt herself breathe again, the air around them brightening. The figure of her brother flickered and writhed, trapped in a wrestling match between entrapment and salvation. "Help me, sister! You can end this!" he begged, the voice becoming desperate. "Aren't you tired of being trapped in the dark?" she demanded, realizing the shadows had fed off his pain just as they had tried to take Alice. "You can choose the light." "No, no!" he cried as the brilliance of her unwavering love enveloped him. "I'll stay. I'll help you." But Molly shook her head, heart aching. "You can't ask me to put Alice at risk to save you." The gut-wrenching choice tore at her, but the truth settled deeper. Some battles had to be fought alone if families were to be whole again. In that silent connection the bond of blood, love, and loss the creature writhed, retreating into the dark until only quiet remained. The cloud of despair lifted, the shadows dispersed, and the only thing left was stillness as Molly crumpled to her knees, Alice tightly in her embrace. And then the light was gone, but hope pulsed bright as the stars glittered above. "We did it," Mommy whispered Alice softly, exhaustion evident in her young voice. She understood that love had triumphed over darkness. The shadows had cast their veil, but it had not consumed them. As dawn peeked over the horizon, they turned to leave the rooftop, stepping into a world rebuilt from the ashes of the night. The air was fresh, scented with possibility, a new day alive with light. With the terror of the store behind them, they descended the ladder, hand in hand, stepping into a brighter future. The whispers of the shadows faded, leaving only the sound of Alice's laughter echoing, filling the air with love and life at long last. They moved forward together, finding peace on the other side. Reborn from darkness, they were stronger than ever. The memories of what had transpired would remain, but love would shield them against anything that dared to follow. And as they left the haunted remnants of that night behind, something glimmered in the distance, an invitation for what was to come. So hold your loved ones close, light your candles and chase away the dark. This is where the story shines anew. If you've made it this far, we need you to take action. Subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Smash the like button now to feed the algorithm, it means the world to us. Flood the comments section with your reactions and theories about this ending. We love hearing from you. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. Only true fans understand how important it is to support the channel. Let us light it up together.